Something feels off in Atlanta, and the season hasn't even started yet. According to growing reports and league chatter, tension may already be building inside the Falcons' locker room, and it centers around newly appointed head coach Kevin Stefanski. The shocking part, he hasn't coached a single regular season snap for Atlanta. Yet insiders are suggesting players are hesitant. Some reports even claim certain veterans are considering their options rather than committing long-term under his leadership. Now, to be clear, no official statements confirm a revolt, but the smoke is thick enough that fans are starting to ask serious questions. Why would players push back before a season even begins? The answer may trace back to Cleveland. Last year, during his time with the Browns, Stefanski found himself at the center of one of the most polarizing quarterback debates in recent memory, involving rising star Shedeur Sanders. Media outlets covered it relentlessly. Analysts dissected every decision. Fans were divided. Some believed Sanders' development wasn't being prioritized. Others argued it was standard competition. But perception matters in the NFL. And when a coach becomes associated with controversy surrounding a young quarterback's trajectory, that narrative doesn't just disappear when he changes teams. Now layer in another twist. Former Browns tight end David Njoku recently announced his departure from Cleveland, and speculation has already begun about whether Stefanski might try to bring familiar faces to Atlanta. At the same time, reports suggest Kyle Pitts could be weighing his future with the Falcons. Coincidence? Maybe. But when roster instability rumors start circulating before Week 1, it signals something deeper. This isn't just about free agency. It's about trust. And in the NFL, once trust cracks, it spreads fast. But to understand how this situation escalated so quickly, we have to go back to where the controversy truly began. Reputations in the NFL don't shift overnight. They build slowly and sometimes collapse just as fast. During his tenure in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski found himself at the center of an increasingly intense debate surrounding the handling of rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders. What started as routine quarterback competition quickly turned into a national storyline. Sports networks dissected every depth chart move. Analysts questioned rotation decisions. Social media amplified every sideline clip. Some fans believed Sanders wasn't receiving the developmental runway a first-round investment deserved. Others defended Stefanski, arguing competition strengthens players and nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. But here, the key: perception overtook nuance. When a young quarterback with massive upside appears to face instability, fans don't see strategic patience. They see mismanagement. Whether that interpretation was fair or not, the narrative spread fast. Headlines multiplied. Debate panels lit up. The situation became bigger than wins and losses. Then came another layer. As reports began circulating about Deshaun Watson working his way back into football activity, speculation intensified. Would Cleveland truly commit to Sanders long-term, or would they hedge their bets again? To be clear, the Browns publicly maintained that competition was healthy and development was ongoing. But mixed messaging fuels uncertainty, and uncertainty erodes confidence. Players around the league watch these situations closely. They talk to agents. They talk to former teammates. They watch how organizations treat quarterbacks, because that position reflects how leadership operates. And once the perception forms that a coach mishandled a franchise-caliber prospect, it doesn't stay contained within one city. It travels, which brings us back to Atlanta, where that same perception may now be influencing decisions before a single snap has been played. Now here, where things get uncomfortable for Atlanta. When Kevin Stefanski arrived, the expectation was stability, offensive structure, veteran leadership, a reset. But instead of a clean slate, reports suggest he may have brought lingering doubts with him. And in today's NFL, players don't ignore patterns. There's been growing speculation that some Falcons veterans are quietly evaluating their futures. Nothing official, no public revolt, but insiders have hinted at hesitation, the kind that shows up when contract talks stall or when players start exploring options earlier than expected. Then came the timing of David Njoku announcing his departure from Cleveland. Almost immediately, rumors started circulating that Stefanski could be trying to recruit familiar faces to Atlanta. Now, bringing in former players isn't unusual. Coaches value trust. Familiarity helps install systems faster. But when it appears reactive instead of strategic, that's different. At the same time, reports suggest Kyle Pitts could be reconsidering his long-term position with the Falcons. If a franchise cornerstone tight end starts weighing exit options during an off-season transition, it signals something deeper than scheme adjustments. It signals uncertainty. And uncertainty spreads quickly inside locker rooms. Players want clarity. They want commitment. They want to know the vision before they commit their prime years to it. Now here's the tension. None of this guarantees a collapse. Off-season rumors often cool down once training camp begins. But when doubt enters before trust is established, a coach has to work twice as hard to rebuild confidence. Which leads to the bigger question. Is this about Atlanta alone? Or is it tied to what's still unfolding in Cleveland, where the quarterback situation may not be as settled as fans expected? While Atlanta deals with whispers, Cleveland is dealing with something just as volatile, uncertainty at quarterback. Recently, footage began circulating of Deshaun Watson training in South Florida. Reports indicate he's been medically cleared and has resumed full football activity. Browns media outlets have highlighted his workouts. Analysts are discussing timelines. And suddenly, the conversation feels open again. Open for what? That's the tension. Because on paper, Cleveland invested heavily in Shedeur Sanders as a long-term solution. He was drafted with franchise expectations. Fans believed the organization had finally found its future. But when a veteran quarterback re-enters the picture with visible momentum and public promotion, questions start forming. Is this true competition? Is this insurance? Or is it hesitation? To be clear, the Browns haven't officially declared any quarterback controversy. Public messaging frames it as depth, competition, and due diligence. That's normal NFL language. But perception tells a different story. When a young quarterback's development window overlaps with heavy media focus on a returning veteran, fans interpret it as instability. Analysts debate whether it helps or hurts, and players watch closely. Because quarterbacks are the heartbeat of organizational identity. If the message from the front office appears divided, even unintentionally, that division can ripple outward. It affects locker room chemistry. It affects leadership hierarchy. It affects belief. And here, where this ties back to Atlanta. If Stefanski's tenure in Cleveland became associated with quarterback ambiguity, that perception doesn't disappear when he changes cities. It follows him. Now the question becomes unavoidable. Are both franchises navigating the same fundamental issue? A credibility gap at the most important position in football. Here, where Browns fans start asking uncomfortable questions. If the organization truly believes Shedeur Sanders is the future, why does the messaging feel so layered? On one hand, he represents long-term potential, a first-round investment, a reset at quarterback after years of instability. On the other hand, public narratives keep circling back to Deshaun Watson and even outside options, whether through the draft, free agency, or potential trades. To be fair, teams explore options every offseason. That's standard. Smart franchises leave no stone unturned. But when exploration starts to look like hesitation, the tone changes. And tone matters. Fans remember last season's debate over how Sanders was handled. They remember rotation decisions. They remember post-game press conferences being dissected. So when new speculation surfaces, even if it's just rumor, it hits differently. Some analysts argue competition sharpens quarterbacks. Others counter that young players need stability more than pressure. Both arguments have merit. But here's the reality. Franchises that find their guy usually act decisively. They build the system around him. They commit publicly. They remove ambiguity. When ambiguity lingers, it invites doubt. Now layer this over the perception surrounding Kevin Stefanski and his Cleveland tenure. Even though he's now in Atlanta, the Browns' quarterback situation keeps reopening old conversations about whether the organization truly learned from past instability. And that's where this becomes bigger than two teams. Because once a franchise develops a reputation for mixed signals at quarterback, it affects recruitment. It affects locker room confidence. It affects how free agents evaluate long-term commitment. Which brings us to the bigger pattern emerging across both cities. In the NFL, reputation spreads faster than press releases. And right now, credibility might be the most valuable asset either franchise is fighting to protect. Here, what most fans don't see. The NFL isn't just a league of contracts and playbooks. It's a league of relationships. Agents talk to each other. Veterans compare notes. Young players ask quiet questions before signing long-term deals. And once a narrative forms about a coach or an organization, it spreads faster than any official statement can contain it. That's the space Kevin Stefanski is navigating right now. Whether fair or exaggerated, the perception that he mishandled Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland became a storyline that traveled beyond Ohio. And in a reputation-driven league, perception often matters as much as record. When players feel uncertain about how quarterbacks are treated, they see it as a reflection of leadership philosophy. Quarterback development isn't just a position battle, it's a signal of organizational stability. If that stability looks shaky, confidence follows. And confidence is everything in a locker room. This doesn't mean Atlanta is doomed. It doesn't mean Cleveland is spiraling. But it does mean both franchises are operating under a microscope. One is trying to establish a new era under a coach carrying public baggage. The other is trying to prove it has finally settled its quarterback situation. Both are fighting the same battle, credibility. Because once doubt enters, it spreads quietly. It shows up in free agency hesitations, in contract negotiations, in subtle locker room body language. And if trust isn't rebuilt quickly, narratives harden. Which brings us to the final crossroads both teams are approaching. This isn't just about play calling or roster depth. It's about whether belief can be restored before skepticism becomes permanent. Now everything narrows to one simple question. Who stabilizes first? In Atlanta, Kevin Stefanski has a limited window to prove that the past doesn't define his future. He hasn't coached a game yet, but perception is already shaping his tenure. If early results are strong, the offseason noise fades. If the Falcons stumble out of the gate, every old storyline resurfaces instantly. Fair or not, that's the reality of modern coaching. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, the spotlight sits squarely on Shedeur Sanders. The franchise invested heavily in him. Fans believe he's the long-term answer. But clarity must replace ambiguity. If the Browns fully commit and structure the offense around him, confidence grows. If competition narratives continue to hover, especially with names like Deshaun lingering in the background, the instability conversation won't disappear. And instability is contagious. This isn't about choosing sides, it's about momentum. Franchises in transition either tighten their foundation or cracks widen under pressure. The Falcons need buy-in from veterans. The Browns need visible commitment to their quarterback future. Both are fighting the same invisible opponent, doubt. The NFL doesn't wait for anyone to fix internal tension. Free agency moves fast. Locker room chemistry forms quickly. Narratives harden within weeks. So here's the bigger takeaway. The ripple effects from one controversial quarterback situation are now touching two separate organizations. Reputation traveled, trust became currency, and both teams are now negotiating with the consequences. Because in this league, talent matters. But belief determines whether talent thrives or walks out the door. And as the 2026 season approaches, the verdict isn't written yet. But it's coming. What makes this entire saga so compelling isn't just the drama. It's the timing. Two franchises, two quarterback narratives, one lingering question about leadership credibility. In Atlanta, Kevin Stefanski is stepping into a situation where perception is already ahead of performance. He doesn't get a grace period. He doesn't get a quiet reset. Every roster move, every press conference, every early season result will be viewed through the lens of what happened in Cleveland. That's the cost of reputation in today's NFL. In Cleveland, the focus remains on Shedeur and whether the organization finally commits without hesitation. The Browns have a chance to silence every lingering doubt, but only if they move with clarity. If mixed signals continue, fans won't blame circumstance. They'll blame pattern. And that's what makes this bigger than a single coaching transition. This is about how quickly trust can erode and how difficult it is to rebuild once it's questioned. It's about how quarterback management shapes organizational identity. It's about how locker rooms respond when leadership appears uncertain. Neither team has collapsed. Nothing is finalized. But both are walking a tightrope. Atlanta must prove stability before instability spreads. Cleveland must prove conviction before ambiguity hardens. Because once players start believing something is off, that belief moves faster than any official statement. And in a league where momentum defines careers, the next few months won't just shape a season. They could redefine legacies. The NFL is watching. And soon enough, the results will speak louder than the rumors ever did.